Seven, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Oh, this you crazy mother.
Welcome to Demetria Reads, where I have fun putting my voice to the written word to entertain you, inform you, and empower you. My name is Demetria Bridges, and I'm a Beantown girl who loves the power of her blueprint sound. And on this podcast, I narrate blogs, articles, poems, novel excerpts, anything that arrests my attention and moves me to pull out my vocal palette and start to paint. I'd love for you to subscribe, write a review, and of course, spread the word. Okay, let's get to today's inspiration. One of the things I love about narrating short stories is when characters are introduced and I get to play in my vocal sound sandbox and bring those characters to life beyond just having the narrator's voice. And so when I read this story, I was so enamored and it was such a fun read for me. I just had to narrate it. Today's story is set in the scenery of racism, especially like the Jim Crow racism. And it deals with three black boys who decided to sit at a lunch counter. And oh boy, what a ruckus that created. So here is the story. Lunch at Woolworth's 5 and Dime by Miles White. I hope you enjoy it. When Clement poured the glass of buttermilk over his head, Randall remembered what he had been taught. He sat there and did not move. The thick milk dripped down his head and into his eyes, momentarily blinding him. He blinked a few times but kept his eyes forward. The milk ran a trail down his shirt and pooled between his legs in a puddle on the stool. His crotch felt wet and soggy, but he forced himself not to squirm. The milk dripped down off the stool and onto the floor. "Well now," Clement said, "looks like this here boy done pissed on hisself, but he pees white." That got a laugh from the other kids standing around the three kids sitting ramrod straight at the counter, not speaking even to each other. Clement looked back at Randall, admiring his work. It was his show now. "I bet he even think he is white, don't you, boy?" Randall sat between Tony and Dexter, his two closest friends, brothers he would die for. As he sat there in the middle of the mob, he thought that day might be today. They knew it might be like this. They knew it because they were told it might be like this. Still, they had no way to know which way this was heading or how far it might go. What they knew for sure was that they had to keep it going. They had to sit there and take it as best they could. The same kid had already slathered ketchup over Dexter's head and put mustard on his shoulders, calling him a hot dog that had been on the grill too long. Tony, the youngest, waited to see what trials he would have to endure. But whatever they were, he was determined he would endure them. He knew they were not the only ones enduring. Other kids like them were enduring in other places. They were all enduring together. Tony decided it was his turn to step up, and he spoke up. "Excuse me, sir," he said. "May we please have 3 cups of coffee with milk? I believe the young lady behind you was just about to pour it." The manager repeated the same thing he had already said 2 times now to the other two. "I'm sorry, but we cannot serve you in here. Y'all gonna need to please leave now." Clement stepped over to Tony and put his face up close enough that Tony could smell the beer on his breath. "Well now," he said, "this little nigga can talk. I bet he think he real smart too. Smarter than all us dumb old rednecks." That got a chuckle, but not enough to satisfy Clement. He wanted to keep it going, too. "You want some coffee, boy?" He made a motion to Craig, looking furtive and nervous behind the counter. "Hold on now, Clement. Milk is one thing, but that coffee there is hot." Clement slammed his fist down hard on the table, spittle foaming at his lips. "Now you give me that coffee, and you give it to me quick, or by God I'll come across this counter and get it myself. Now you give it." The 100 or so kids crammed into the tiny lunchroom fell silent. Craig now regretted calling Clement up and telling him 3 niggers were sitting up in here wanting service and the white customers were walking out, and could he bring a couple of guys over and get them to move on out of here. He had not expected all this. He picked up the coffee pot and set it on the counter. "I sure hope you know what you're doing," he said. Clement took up the pot and went to pour it over Tony's head, raising it up slowly. "I ain't got no milk for you, nigger," he said, "but here's your coffee." Craig hesitated for a second, but then reached across the counter and grabbed Clement's hand, squeezing it hard like he might break it off. "Nah," he said, looking Clement evenly in the eyes, "I guess I don't reckon you will." I hope you enjoyed today's selection, and I hope to read to you again. I'll be reading a few times a week and would love to hear your thoughts. So leave your blueprint sound via a review, and I'll catch up with you next time on Demetria Reads.